Welcome to the Austin Wedding Show. I'm your host, Jordan Bonchkin. We are coming to you right here from the heart of wedding country in the world famous Ladybird Studios. And of course, you all know my co-host, the one and only Taylor Juarez.
Thanks, Jordan. Today we have a very special guest wedding planner from Bride's Best Friend. She started the company in 2010 and went full-time in 2017. She's planned over 150 weddings and loves all of the things she's been able to learn from each unique experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cassie Crudo.
Hey! Great to have you.
Thanks. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
What have you been up to lately?
Growing and being pretty busy during inquiry season. It's been great to hear from all the newly engaged couples and really kind of look at our 2020 year.
Our love is a moving sea between the shores of our souls.
I promise to fill your cup, but not drink from it.
I will always dance and make music with you, but also let you be alone.
Even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music.
I vow to always stand together with you, yet not too near. For the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow.
Our love is the moving sea between the shores of our souls, and I love you.
So we're actually going to talk about a wedding today that we did with you last February, but it was a really special one, and we're so excited to talk about it with you. The wedding was for Jeanette and Justin, and that has to be one of the most unique groups of people that I've gotten the pleasure of shooting, and everything about that day was just so special and heartfelt and touching. And so tell us kind of more about the day and how you planned the wedding for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So they are both part of the Austin Improv group, which makes them very fun to be around.
Yeah.
And their guests were also a lot of them in the same group, and were able to kind of have that great experience of being able to bounce and be witty and quick. And so that was a really fun bridal party and group to kind of be around. So Jeanette and Justin hired me for coordination. And so they did a lot of the planning on their own. And we met several times to go through the final details, do the final walkthrough, plan their floor plan, and make sure that all the details were coming together. And then contact all of their vendors to make sure they have everything. We do the timeline planning just to make sure that the logistics are straight. And so that's definitely kind of the experience that we had with them.
So maybe let's talk about kind of some of the vendors and like, did they pick some? Did you help choose some? Mm-hmm. What was kind of the process of picking the team?
Yeah, so with any package with us, you get access to our awesome vendor list. And so these are people that we've vetted, we've worked with. You guys are on there. And so definitely making sure that we've had, a great experience and that they don't add stress both in the planning process and on the wedding day. Yeah. And having those two work together is so important, because if you have a vendor that you send a bullet pointed list to and they answer all but two, you still have two questions for them. Yeah. And so that's really important, and something that we look for in our vendors is that they are going to make the planning process easier both for us and our clients, answer all of the questions, and then think of the next question. What is the follow-up to that question? Because I know that when I answer this, the next one's going to be this thing. Let me go ahead and just take care of that for you.
Yeah.
And so both that and on the wedding day, do they, arrive on time and really kind of go that extra mile. And so all of our clients get access to that. And I think Jeanette and Justin had a balance between kind of looking through that list and curating it, and then going with recommendations from their friends and family, as well as kind of doing some of their own research. I know they talked to me a couple of points throughout the planning process about, hey, have you worked with this person? And definitely kind of making sure to utilize our experience, but also have a unique planning process on their own.
Yeah, I think that's one of like the biggest parts of having a planner is like somebody who knows the industry so well that can like vet all those vendors, and they have experience working with them, and like the stress, everybody talks about what a huge stressful thing it is planning a wedding. But if you got somebody, like you, that's, their right hand through that whole process, just
That's-
makes everything so much easier.
That is the goal for sure. I know there's kind of the old adage, if you can make it through the engagement and the wedding planning process, you're all set for marriage.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hard discussions that come up in wedding planning, from budgets to values to what you align with. And that's part of we plan from a value perspective. We talk to them, are you introverted? Are you extroverted? What does that look like? And then making recommendations beyond that for, okay, if you need some private time and kind of have an introverted experience, then we can make that happen. And then also kind of give you some recharge time. And we're going to build that into your timeline. And we're going to work with vendors that know how to definitely facilitate that and understand that's a different experience from one wedding to another, and that there's a lot of things that we have to change to make sure that you have breathing room and bathroom breaks and whatever that means for you.
And that you actually eat dinner.
Yes, eating dinner is so important. You drink for a long
blows my
time.
mind how people don't eat much, and I'll be like, I would have to be able to sit down and enjoy an allotted amount of time to eat at my own wedding. I would be very angry if I didn't get to eat, So especially after you paid for all the catering, and don't you want to enjoy it?
Exactly. You want to taste your own food. And beyond that, I mean, it is for a lot of people a long day of drinking and eating is really important to make sure that you have a smooth rest of your night also. So if you are either introverted or a huge talker and you want people to come up and talk to you all the time, sometimes we recommend a private dinner, because then you can go and you can be available when you're in the space and just talk to people and have a private dinner, versus having people talk to you the entire dinner, which is great. I mean, you want to spend time with your guests and you don't want to be rude and you don't want to say, thank you for traveling from Michigan. I can't talk to you right now.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel great. But you also need to eat.
Yeah.
That's really important.
So did Jeanette and Justin do a private dinner? I was trying to remember.
They did not. They did a sweetheart table, and so they kind of did a blend of both worlds. And so they actually wanted to do a receiving line as people were in line for buffet. And so they ate at the end. And so we had arranged that with the catering in advance, that they were going to get their meals prepared for them after the line went through. And so that was all in advance communication with peach tortilla, and they just executed that really well.
They
and
always
so,
do. They're awesome.
I know. I'm hungry just thinking about
Yeah.
that. So they did a receiving line while people were entering the separate room at Mercury Hall. They have that kind of side room that we had the buffet in. And so as their guests came in, instead of kind of just standing there, they were definitely there to engage with Jeanette and Justin. And that was a really cool experience for them to really get to say a unique hi to everybody, but not have it be at their tables and not have it be at the end of the ceremony, as kind of used to be more of a tradition.
So you mentioned the wedding was at Mercury Hall.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really great venue, especially for them, because it's a smaller venue and it just everything felt really intimate. And you have the indoor outdoor, but I just really enjoyed the space, and it felt like a really good space for that wedding.
We love Mercury Hall. It's really dynamic for something that was, brought over from, outside of Austin and kind of repurposed here as a historical space. It's really unique in the, having the white walls and still having that kind of not necessarily rustic, but almost like boho chic kind of feel to it. And you can have a decent guest count in there, 100 to 150, I think, would definitely fill the space. And then beyond that, but still feeling really intimate even if you only have, 50 to 75. And so it has a wide range of availability, but still not feeling overcrowded or real sparse if you don't have a higher guest count. And so that, and they have the 2 different locations for the ceremony. I guess they have as many as you want to point, but they have 2 main ones that are that are most common. Yeah. And so having that experience and being able to kind of see the beautiful greenery in the background and all of that really kind of helps juxtapose everything with the white.
Obviously, super energetic group, being this improv group and all their friends that were, that just kind of comes with the territory. But it was obviously a pretty lively party. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming they had a really good DJ and other exciting things going on in the reception. Maybe you could tell us more about that.
Yeah. So Byrne Rock was our DJ, and he's always exceptional. And so definitely kind of chatting through the different components and making sure that everything's set up and all of that kind of stuff. And then with with having that ceremony inside and flipping into having the reception inside, there was definitely some caveats on, okay, so when the DJ sets up, we need to make sure that they're set up in the same space so that we're not trying to move all of this equipment during a flip, or if we do, how do we do sound check with all the guests still inside? Yeah. So there were some logistical things that, Byrne and I definitely talked through at length to make sure that we nailed it, and he did an exceptional job.
So one of the things also, we just keep talking about how unique this wedding was, but something that was different is, when you're doing the formal dances, they had the first dance and father-daughter, but instead of doing a mother-son dance, because the groom didn't have, family and stuff, they did, and it was a surprise to him, right, on the day. So during that time, I think he started with like one person or something, but then all of a sudden, like everyone, all these friends just kept getting up and they kept trading places. And before you know it, all of these people were dancing with him. And it was so special. And it even ties into like his toast about like, this is my family now. Like, this is my home. I found home and family with all of the people here.
Don't cry. Don't cry.
It was so cool. Okay. But yeah, that was something really special that I thought.
Yeah, and the way that that was executed was really unique too, because it was a surprise. And so we can't put it in the timeline because he was reading the timelines. So we are really careful when we do surprises because the couple has hired us to be their advocate. And so with surprises, we don't want to take away those moments that are so meaningful, but on the flip side, you've also paid us to make sure that there are not surprises. So we ran that one through Jeanette to make sure that everything was good to go. So she knew about it, but he did not. So we had to come up with a way to communicate with all of the vendors, hey, this is happening at this point. Also to make sure he didn't wander off to like go to the bar, or go to the bathroom. He has to be in the room for this. Yeah. One of their bridal party members started it off and said, I am your chosen family and I am here for you and we love you. And then everyone else kept tapping out, kind of the formal, like, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder and then take over until there wasn't anybody left, it felt like. And everybody joined on the dance floor. And that's actually, I think, the dance that's at the end of the video. And you just see this just absolute warmth of emotion.
Not sure if I really need to say this, but the dance floor is now officially open.
Kind of everybody really supporting him, and I mean, that was such a moment.
It was.
And just this watching people pour out love in such a visual and physical way is really unique because you don't get to see that. A lot of people have really heartfelt words and facial expressions, but watching something like this where you see, oh my gosh, every person in this room not just likes you, hey, we're going to a wedding, but loves you in such a profound way, and you can just see it happen. That was a really incredible moment, and that was one of the 3 times I cried.
Yep. Yeah, it didn't feel like, some weddings, it's like, wow, they invited probably everybody they know. Like, not like they have like a small group that's like their close friends, but there's like a lot of people. But like, this is one of those weddings where you're like, no, they know every single person and every single person is like their close friend. It didn't feel like, oh, there's a random acquaintance here and there. It was like, no, everyone was super involved.
Yeah.
And
that's so special.
For such an intimacy level, there was still quite a few guests.
Yeah.
So normally when you have that type of experience where everybody, it's, a 40-person guest count or something like that, but they had significantly more than that. So it was really cool to watch this happen with 75 people and really just kind of having everybody flood in. Yeah, I like looking back on that one.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch on was Jeanette's dress. I thought, first of all, she is so beautiful and so classic. I loved her look. I loved her dress and even the way she incorporated pearls into the look. And I remember you saying something about she wanted to recreate something to do with her mother. Tell us more about that.
I feel like she reminded me of a 1920s goddess or something.
Absolutely,
just the gorgeous hair. I mean, of course, I'm biased on the pixie cuts, but definitely just has that ethereal feel. But yeah, so I think she originally wanted to wear her mother's dress, and something didn't quite work out with that. And so she ended up finding this gorgeous dress and wanted to recreate this photo that both her mom and her grandmother had done. And it's a very kind of serene pose, which is funny because that's not really like Jeanette.
Mm-hmm.
this really serious.
Yeah.
She's just really fun and warm to be around. And so seeing her so formal was really interesting to kind of compare. And her mom had the original photo on her phone. And so we kind of posed her and made sure that there was a few minutes, and that was on the list for you all and the photographer to make sure that we were able to actually recreate that. And so it was a really cool experience to kind of watch some of those family traditions and some of those kind of like nod to experiences that have happened in your family in the past. I would love to hear that they framed something and have kind of a trio going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really cool to watch that. I think it's interesting how when you're posing photographs, how those still come out well on video. I think that's hard to achieve, so kudos. But having that kind of be a moving shot and then remembering, oh yeah, this is what we were doing. And that's such a cool experience. And then, comparing with the still, obviously, also.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Having her in that space as well. I mean, just Mercury Hall, I think, was just such a great backdrop with the white, and then they had like the stained glass windows.
Yeah.
So we got several really cool shots in that little time frame of her being kind of getting some bridals done and putting her near the window and then recreating that photo. And so that was a really cool way to kind of capture just like her essence.
Definitely. And the florals and decor that were actually there were repurposed for the sweetheart table. And so it was neat because we were able to have it inside just mainly due to kind of the chill and be able to kind of have this framing arrangement that was originally going to be a centerpiece, and it's like, hey, why not use this twice?
Yeah.
And that was definitely part of the planning if we did need to move it inside. Jeanette really, one of her values was making sure that everybody was comfortable, and so when we did start kind of looking at the weather, she did not want to be cold and have her guests be cold, and so we definitely moved it inside because of that, and that's the risk of having a January wedding. But definitely the shawls that they had were just stunning for having a winter wedding, and she got them for her whole bridal party, and so they all matched, and those were some really fun things to kind of watch as they're posing and as they're having a blast together because they're all best friends.
Yeah.
And definitely kind of watching that experience unfold. And that was kind of the photo parts happening outside, but definitely kind of thinking about that transition when we do have to make that decision based on the weather. What is that going to look like and how are we going to make that special? And so seeing that transition and watching those arrangements and decor kind of happen for the ceremony, but then being able to double use them for the stage photos were really cool to kind of watch that come to life and say, okay, this contrast is really neat with the green and the white, and then having the stained glass window, and then having that be the photo that she's recreating, and having all of those pieces kind of blend together was really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say one kind of just a plug for like why people need planners is because, in a situation like that where, a couple weeks before or even the week of, you decide, hey, we got to move this inside. And especially like in this case, you weren't setting up the typical like rows of chairs. They were just the reception table. So people were sitting kind of around tables as if they're at a reception, but just watching them get married, which is really fun and unique and casual, and it totally fit their vibe. But it's a scenario where then, okay, so now we have to think about how that affects vendors, how it affects where we set up, because it's a different setup for us. But I don't even remember there being that much stress, honestly. Like, we knew what was coming. You helped us figure out, where can we be and not be in the way. So having, you doing such a great job coordinating all of that really helped in us being able to create that film.
Definitely. Well, thank you. It's interesting because I have the role of being everywhere and nowhere and trying not to photobomb everything. And so definitely kind of being aware of where everybody is and then also not being in those photos, but then taking that next step and knowing kind of what that's going to mean for the guest experience. And with people sitting at their tables, we had to really think about, okay, well, if you have, any kind of reserved tables, how do you communicate that to the guests in advance so that people aren't drinking out of the water glass for reception and then not sitting there? So there's definitely some kind of logistical things that we had to chat through. And so we actually flipped a couple of the reserved tables. We pulled their chairs so that there was the front row for the people who were actually walking down the aisle, like the family and some of the really close friends and that sort of thing that weren't necessarily standing in the bridal party, to make sure that they had places to go and they knew where that was going to be, because he was bringing down the dogs and had to have somebody to hand them off to so that he wasn't, vows and dogs all at the same time. And so making sure that we kind of talk through where their seat's going to be so that we can accommodate that. And if we pull that seat, is there still enough room for everyone who's seated, because we are seating at tables? And is that seat later going to become someone else's seat, or are they going to kind of fall back to where they were originally sat? And if they, do touch the tables, how are we going to manage that and make sure that everything is, clean and perfect for dinner? So there was a lot of different pieces that kind of went into that planning. And so we talked through, a lot of times we talk through several different plans, the positives and negatives of each. And at the end of the day, it's their wedding, not mine. Yeah. And so definitely kind of letting them know, education-wise, here are the options, here's the positives and negatives, and then you get to make the decision on which one is the best fit for you. We can obviously make a recommendation, but knowing what is important to you, we don't just make decisions for your wedding. We talk to you about, okay, here's what you're going to go into knowing this, and you're going to be educated on that decision. So if you do make a decision that maybe isn't even the one that we recommended, you know what you're giving up in order to make that. And then usually we learn the why. So a lot of times when we're planning, we're trying to achieve the why. Right. Why is it that it's important to bring it in? Okay, it's about guest comfort. How do we make sure that we nail that experience? Because a lot of the minutia all fades into that. And so that's the why we're trying to plan towards, and we can come up with a lot of ideas on how to make sure that that happens, because that's really the ultimate reason. It's not exactly where people sit that's important. It's that we want the guests to feel comfortable. That's what we're trying, that's our why. That's why we're getting there.
Which goes back to what you said earlier about value and that being the priority in your planning, which I like. I like that that's kind of your mission, is like, hey, we want to approach this at a value standpoint of like what's most important, because ultimately, money and budget and all the technical things, those will come together if we know exactly what we need to hone in on for the experience that you want.
And that's part of our discovery process for sure. We have kind of different discovery processes depending on which package you book, just because we're involved in different levels. The introvert versus extrovert kind of scale is one of them. Values, what you've liked at weddings, what you haven't. All of those things are things that we ask and we discover so we can learn how to plan your wedding, because they do vary so much from wedding to wedding, and we're not your cookie cutter shop. Like, that's just not what we do. And so for us, it's a lot about values. And okay, your value is having something that's really fun and unique, and we want to do food trucks. I love food trucks. There's a lot of logistical things that happen with food trucks. And so just making sure that we've thought about those, and that you might have to spend a little more to be able to achieve X, Y, and Z. And so really thinking about, does that achieve your why throughout the entire planning process really helps people stay in budget, helps them make decisions when things are emotional, because you can kind of filter everything through, what is our why? Why do we want that? What is our goal with that? And really just kind of looking at the end product.
Absolutely.
Which is why you're such an awesome planner to work with. Well, because we can even feel that on the day. And we definitely did. Marshall and I shot that wedding, and the whole thing was so unique and so special, and you just really made it seamless for us. So we loved working with you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I always hope that if people have questions, they can come up to us and learn the why. And 9 times out of 10, there is a reason why we did a certain thing. And I promise we talked through all 14 options. And we can definitely fill in on, okay, here's how we ended up here. And if that does cause a complication of, okay, well, it's really important that the aisle be clear, so where can we have you stand? We'll have thought through that as part of the, hey, here's the bonus and drawback. And if that is one of the drawbacks, they already know. And so we've kind of talked through what our options are and what the next steps are. And so the hope is that on the wedding day, we've already had a lot of those discussions. And so we can help kind of work through anything that does come up, but most of it's already been talked about in the pre-planning. Yeah.
Well, it's been amazing having you on. I'd love for you to give a shout out to yourself. Where can people find more about you if they're interested in having you plan their wedding?
Well, I hope we're everywhere, but our website is bridesbestfriend.me. I am clever. And then we're on Instagram at BBF Austin. We're on Facebook. We're kind of all over. You can definitely Google us. But yeah, we do all of Austin and surrounding areas. And we'd love to definitely make some days great.
Well, thanks so much again for coming on. And thank you to all of you watching at home. And remember,
Keep Austin married.